Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 961B, and today's date is May 3rd, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. is using peace in the Middle East to prep for war. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, Obamacare is deteriorating rapidly. I mean, there are huge problems, and premiums are going to skyrocket this year. And we're getting word from all the insurance companies that they just don't have the people into Obamacare like they thought they were going to have. They thought all Americans were going to be all in. And we're starting to see that insurance companies are starting to back out. Remember, built into Obamacare, there is that bailout clause where the taxpayers will help them out if they don't make their profits. And we knew from the beginning, if something is truly good and beneficial to the people, you don't have to push it, you don't have to lie, and people will look at it and say, yes, this is a benefit to me, I will join up. People are looking at this saying, where is the benefit? I see skyrocketing premiums, I see high deductibles, and I'm penalized if I don't want this crap. And what we're seeing right now is the people are revolting against Obamacare. That's what happens. When you don't make something good, people don't buy it. It goes with any product. And this is what we're seeing right now. Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're saying their profits have plummeted by 75%. And this is according to analysis by AM Best Company. And we're seeing a lot of insurance companies saying, you know something, our profits are falling so rapidly that we don't know if we can keep this up. And what's going to happen is Obamacare is going to eventually implode. And they're going to have to make a decision on what they're going to do about this situation. Now, the TTIP and the TPP, they are having a huge amount of problem going forward here. Now, we understand that the TTIP, the TPP, is created by corporations, by central banks. The negotiations are in secret. And we're starting to see that the European countries are saying, you know something? We can't sign this. France's trade minister is saying, absolutely not. This whole deal that's discussed behind closed doors since 2013 is not going to help 850 million people with this trade deal. It's actually going to hurt these people. And the U.S. and the corporations and the central banks, they will not budge on this deal. And we're seeing that Europe is not going along with it, and the people of the United States should not go along with it either. Now, Obama is getting very angry about all this. And he's basically out there threatening the world. He says the rules of trade in the Asia-Pacific must be written by America, not China or any other country. And he argued that he's calling for swift ratification of the TPP free trade deal. He said America should write the rules. America should call the shots. Other countries should play by the rules that America and our partners set, not the other way around. Well, if you want an equal trade deal that benefits each country, they need to read it, they need to understand it, and if it doesn't work out for them, why would you do it? I mean, think about it. If you were doing anything with a contract, and you read the contract, and it did not benefit you whatsoever, everything was to the benefit of the person giving you the contract, would you sign it? Would you go ahead with it? Or would you say, wait a minute. You see this part here where it says I have to give you my firstborn? You see this part here where it says I'll have to give you part of my income for the next 70 years? I don't want that part. And if you can't come to a mutual agreement and remove these sections that give you at least some benefit, you're not going to sign it. You never will sign it. And this is what the countries are doing. They're looking at this saying, where is the benefit to us? And the U.S., the corporations, the central banks, it's completely one-sided. If something is good and open for everyone, it doesn't have to be negotiated in secrecy. It doesn't have to be done without anyone reading it. The only time you do that is when you're trying to put something over on someone. It's like in the movies when you see someone here sign the contract and all you see is the dotted line. They hide everything else with their hand and they say, just sign here. Don't worry about all that other stuff. It's good for you. This is what the U.S. is doing to other countries. And when I talk about countries, I'm not talking about the people of the country. I'm talking about the governments, the corporations, the central bankers, the elite, who are doing this to other countries. So when I talk about the U.S., I'm not talking about the people. Just so we understand this. This is the government that doesn't work for the people anymore. This is a government that works for foreign entities, corporations, central banks, and others. So they don't represent me, and I'm sure it doesn't represent a lot of you. Now, out in North Korea, they keep talking about how North Korea is going to be having a fifth nuclear test. Now, satellite images of North Korea is showing that nothing is about to happen. There's no clarity on whether they're going to launch anything or do anything. And we're seeing a lot of propaganda come out from this area because what they're trying to do is they're trying to convince everyone using the propaganda that North Korea is going to be a threat. They're going to attack the United States with nuclear weapons, which would make no sense whatsoever because think about the number of nuclear weapons the U.S. has. Think about what would happen to North Korea in a split second. No, this is being used to make sure you understand who the enemy is going to be when we go to war. This is being used to try to provoke North Korea or use some type of false flag to convince everyone that North Korea did something when they really didn't, to start a war. This is the build-up to what is coming. They need the propaganda before the war. They need the enemies before the war. And this is exactly what they're doing. Now, the U.S. is taking the next step in the South China Sea. And we see that 3 destroyers, they have deployed to the Western Pacific. And this is made up of a squadron of guided missile destroyers. And there's 3 of them. And they're going to conduct routine patrols, maritime security operations. And they're going to be doing this in that region. And we know why they're there. They're there to provoke China once again. And we're going to see more and more warships move into this area. And we're going to see this happen in North Korea. We're going to see it happen with China. We're going to see it happen with Russia. Because what they're trying to do right now is push war. Now, out in Moldova, we see U.S. troops will participate in a joint military exercise from May 3rd to May 20th, and nearly about 200 soldiers from the American 2nd Cavalry Unit and 58 technical units of the U.S. Army will join about 165 troops there. And this exercise is called Dragon Pioneer 2016. And of course, this is all about training for war with Russia. Now, these are all war training drills. This is the rehearsal for what is coming. And they've been doing it all throughout Europe. They've been doing it in the Mediterranean. They've been doing it in the Pacific. Because, think about it. Do they really need to be in these areas to train? You can do the training anywhere at sea. You can do training anywhere on land. The only reason you would train in these areas is to understand the terrain, to provoke another country, and to leave troops and military assets in the location of the drills. And this is what we have been seeing since the beginning. Now, out in Yemen, things are not going well there. We see the pro-Saudi faction. They have withdrawn from the Yemeni peace talks, which was organized by the UN. And they claim that the Houthi movement have violated the ceasefire with them. And when we look at this closely, we see exactly what happened. Now, of course, the corporate media, the U.S. government, the Yemeni government, which was pushed out of Yemen, they're going to use this as propaganda to say, it's their fault. But what actually happened, according to many reports, was that a neutral faction of soldiers from the former Yemeni government launched raids against the Houthi territory. The Houthis then responded with an offensive that seized the base. So they were provoked, and they went ahead and they seized the base, and they said, okay, look, they attacked us. But they didn't mention the other part, and they always seem to do this. They seem to provoke and say it was the other side. We see this happen in Libya. We see it happen in Iraq. We see it happen in Syria. We see it happen in Ukraine. And the U.S. uses this tactic over and over and over. Now, U.S. forces, they are arriving in Yemen. Of course, they were there saying that they're fighting al-Qaeda. But we can see right now that the Saudi forces are not doing the job. The paid mercenaries are not doing the job. And it looks like U.S. forces are coming into Yemen. We know we have U.S. forces in Libya. We know we have U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. And it seems like for no boots on the ground, there are a lot of boots on the ground in every single country. Now, the United States is moving forward with plans for the possible military intervention in Libya. This is coming from top U.S. officials. They've confirmed that, yes, military and intelligence assets have been reassigned to this area. And they're saying that, yes, we've been flying drone surveillance aircraft over the skies of Libya. They're gathering intelligence, and more drone flights are occurring at this point. And the U.S. has already committed sending warships to the coast of Libya, and it looks like they're just waiting for that green light to go ahead. They're waiting for that unity government to say, we are in full power right now. Please come in and get those people that don't agree with the puppet government. We need them gone. They're all terrorists now. We're going to call them al-Qaeda. They're all terrorists. We need to go after them, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, it's come out that, yes, it was the terrorists that fired upon the hospital in Aleppo. It was the Free Syrian Army, and we know the U.S. was flying A-10s around that area at the same exact time. There's a video on the X22Report.com site that shows the moment of impact when the missile hit the hospital. You can see that video. I also have it on YouTube for those YouTube viewers. But what we're seeing right now is that the Free Syrian Army, well, they refused to recognize the partial ceasefires. The FSA also rejected the U.S. and Rosha Brak regime of silence, and they're not abiding by any of the peace deals or ceasefire deals right now. Because what's happening is the U.S. is continually using the notion that they're pushing for peace. This is a stall tactic, because what they're really doing is they're preparing for war, and they need the time. And this is why we see them continually saying, no, we want peace. No, we want peace. We want a ceasefire. And if you notice, there is no ceasefire. It's completely falling apart. Now, Turkey is trying to get involved here because they're continually saying that Syria is firing missiles at them, and now they're returning fire. Now, why in the world would Syria pick a fight with Turkey at this point? It makes no sense whatsoever. They've been pushing the Islamic State out. They've been losing ground. They have Russia helping. You know Russia is not going to be firing missiles. You know Assad is not going to be firing missiles. Erdogan is up to his old tricks once again, where he's trying to start something, trying to ignite war in this area, and he's pushing very hard at this point. We see John Kerry. The entire peace process is completely phony. He's discussing peace. He wants peace, but everything that's coming out of his mouth is just talk. If we look at the actions, we look what they're really doing. In the background, we see warships coming into the area. We see the coalition forces building up troops all around. We see Germany upgrading the base in Incirlik. We see the U.S. just supplied Turkey with more advanced weaponry, missiles that reach 90 kilometers to be set on the border. We see all of this happening at the same time. Then we see all the travel warnings in Lebanon, in Turkey, where the families of the U.S. had to leave the area. NATO has ships in the area. They're sailing them to this area at this point, along with Germany and the other coalition forces. This right now is not peace. It's not a ceasefire. It's a stall tactic for the U.S. and the coalition forces to set up everything for this major offensive. This is what they're doing at this point. We've seen in the past. It's the same exact MO. Oh no, we're not going after Assad. Oh, we're not helping the Free Syrian Army. We're not supplying with them weapons. We're not helping the Islamic State. We can't find their convoy of trucks. We can't find how they're getting the oil out of the country. Of course, until Russia exposed all of it. And then you start to realize, which we knew all along, that the Islamic State was working for the United States. It is their proxy army, and the moderate rebels really didn't exist. And then we learn that the moderate rebels, the terrorist groups, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, the Islamic State, they're the ones who are using chemical weapons. They're the ones who are torturing the people. They're the ones who are killing the civilians in the area with the help of the United States, destroying the infrastructure. We even had a Pentagon official saying it's ridiculous that we've only killed 26 civilians. I should say the U.S. government, the neocons, have only killed 26 civilians when we bombed 6,000 infrastructures and dropped, tens of thousands of bombs. It makes no sense. The math doesn't add up. And then we showed, no, there were a lot more civilians that were killed. And we see the U.S. continually uses propaganda over and over because what is their main objective at this point? It's to get war started. Yes, they would like Assad to be removed, but I think we're past this point at this time. They're going to try to push in this direction. I believe they're going to try this most likely in the summer time, probably the end of July, August area, where they'll have everything set up and ready to go, and they need to stall with the ceasefire all the way up to that point. And this is something we have to watch very closely. Now, these indicators are showing us that this is what we're seeing right now. Now, can things change? Of course they can. Remember, these people are not gods. They get messed up. Their plans don't work out. Remember, it's the government. And if something goes haywire, they have to reorganize, replan. But at this point, we see that all indicators are pointing to this scenario at this time. Now, the Islamic State, we know that they're out there hacking everywhere, collecting names, and we hear that now they have about 3,600 random New Yorkers. And they're saying that they are on the kill list. And they're going to wreak havoc in New York. Now, we know this is going to be a false flag. We know this is a propaganda scare tactic. We've seen it in Canada. We've seen it in Australia. We've seen it in France twice. We've seen it in Belgium. And all of this is being done is for one reason and one reason only. It's to scare the people into going to war. It's to convince you that we need to go to war. Now, we all understand at this point that once these physical attacks occur, we know most likely they will use cyber attacks. Now, cyber attacks are very difficult to prove. Cyber attacks, you can just go out there on the media and say, Russia just cyber attacked us. They hit our financial institutions. They brought the banking system to its needs. We have to stop the trading on the stock exchange, BAT system, the NASDAQ, and we know they've implemented kill switches on all these systems so they can just shut them down at a moment's notice. We're going to have to close the banks. And most likely, this will happen on a Friday. Because this way, they can say, look, it happened on a Friday. We closed the banks. We'll open up Monday. Don't worry about it. And at this point, they can use the bail-ins. They can say, we had to do this. Because when we looked at the financials, we saw that a lot of funds were drained away. The banks are insolvent. The economy is coming down. We're going to have to keep the banks closed a little bit longer when Monday approaches. We'll see power outages in certain sections of the country to convince you that, North Korea or China, they're cyber attacking the power infrastructure. All of this has been planned already. All of this has been laid out by the U.S. government. And all they're waiting for is the green light. Now, the question is, why would they do all this? Why would they need to do all this? Well, they need something so horrific, so incredible, to convince you, to convince your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your mothers, your fathers, to say, okay, they just attacked America. It is time to go to war. This is what they've been planning. This is going to be the big event. This is going to be the collapse of the system. And even when war starts, the economy is still going to be collapsing. It's not going to stop it. It's not going to make it better. Actually, it's going to be worse. Because now we're going to be in an economic disaster. Plus, they're going to implement the draft for men and women, mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, will be going off to war. And this has been their plan from the beginning. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.